Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to An
Hello.
Honest Look. Good
Yes, welcome.
morning.
It's morning for me.
It's evening for me.
Yes, and where are you right now? You're in Europe,
And I'm in Tallinn, Estonia. Yeah, with
Estonia.
this beautiful white wall. Not very creative to stay in topic,
Yeah.
to stay on topic. Yeah, but we do what we can, right? As we
Well,
move around.
well, exactly. I'm just adjusting things here a little bit, but yeah, no, I mean, I the topic of creativity has come up quite a bit over this last week. Been doing lots of reading and lots of listening to different podcasts and things like that, and what kind of kept coming up was this notion of that we have one mind, but we're using it in two different ways.
Right, right.
And we get trapped into using more of one side, our intellectual side, more than our creativity side.
Right, right.
And and I've noticed, especially with myself, and just prior to we starting the podcast, you were sharing with me sort of an activity that was kind of, can I use mindless?
Kind of mindless. Yeah, I was just sharing that I've been doing a job that's been very humbling
Yeah.
because there's not much for me to do. And while some people enjoy that, I actually find it really difficult to stand around all day. And I find myself checking the time every like 5 minutes because it's not engaging me, right?
Hmm.
And I would say that literally is the opposite of when I do something creative.
Yeah.
Because creativity really gets me into the flow. It's stimulating, is just adds like joy and happiness to my life. Like I love creating things, and I love colors, and I love combining things, and I love like that kind of creative challenge in anything that I do. It doesn't have to be a painting or clothing necessarily. It's just like even creative writing can be very stimulating. And I find myself doing a job after a really, really, really long time in my life that I haven't had a job like this, where there's not much intellect or creativity or much of anything involved in what I do. And
Yeah.
it's been a lot of self coaching, reframing that, and like bringing myself back to the moment, paying attention to, the speakers that are talking and just reframing things. But I have to be honest, I have gone into the complaining, like just feeling a little bit like annoyed by it because it's not a state that I'm used to. But it's also been a really important reminder of why the it's what's crucial to do something that you love and enjoy, that makes you feel fulfilled and stimulated and challenged, to be honest.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it was really another reminder of how much I love what I do, now, and how important it was to really stick to it, because it is something that speaks to my soul and to my heart, that challenges me, that's creative, that's fulfilling,
Hmm.
versus doing something just to, let's say, earn something, whether it's money or it's an exchange or whatever it is, right? Yeah, so it's been like a confirmation of I'm on the right path, and also like, oh wow, I haven't been in this place since I was like in college, like 20 years maybe.
Hmm.
And yeah, how really an reaffirming that that is a very, very important factor in at least for me it is, and I would say it is for most people, to be able to enjoy what you do every day. Like every minute of your day should count towards that, your overall happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot packed in what you just said. What 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 happened a couple of days ago? I happened to be on a beach, place where I I don't go often because it's remote. It takes me about but just over an hour, hour and a half to drive to, kind of a thing. But it's a beautiful sandy beach on the west coast of the island I live on. And what's unique about it is they have these tiny, well, about silver dollar size, on average, flat rocks, and they're kind of scattered all over the beach. And I've been to other beaches on the island here, and this is the only place where I've ever seen these. And every time I go there, I go beachcombing, and it's also hugely filled with driftwood. And driftwood has got a variety of different shapes and textures and colors and all these different things, and then combined with all these little stones, these flat stones. I found myself just walking along the beach and really being sort of in a creative mindset, in the sense of everything I looked at had potential to be something more than just what it was. You know, I picked up a piece of driftwood that looked like, for me, an orca sort of coming out of the water. It had a fin and it had a very fish shape look to it. And then it was sort of like, you're picking up pieces of stone and things like that, and you're getting this curiosity around what could be different about this. And I was coming up with very unique, for me anyways, ideas around what could I do with all these little shaped rocks. But what was noticing me after I was reflecting more on not so much on the activity, but what kind of mindset I was having, was I was having a very, like, when we say creative, I'm thinking about additive. Like, we're adding something to the world. We're adding something to our life.
Right.
And versus when I'm wrapped up in my intellect, it's not creative. And matter of fact, in a lot of cases, I find it more destructive, taking away from the world, taking away from the experience. So I when I was toying with the idea, and I pitched the idea about the show today, I found creativity to be almost like a doorway into a place of more contentment, a place of happiness. Not that
Right.
not that I had to look for creative things to do. And that's the other thing that I think we get trapped in, is that I know when I'm in a creative mind space, I feel happier. So that's where I need to be going more often. But life isn't always about being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
It's about the mundane, like what you're experiencing. And I've had lots of jobs where it was like licking envelopes for 8 hours.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm curious, like, can we still find creativity in what we consider the mundane?
I mean, I think you can find creativity in pretty much anything that you do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's how you choose to show up and how you choose to look at it and how you choose to what is your concept of creativity, right? And that's another important point to make, right? Because I feel like oftentimes people really constrict that concept to like arts
Yes.
and like actual creative work, but like coaching can be very creative too. Like
Yeah.
because anything that has to do with your intuition, anything that's birthed spontaneously is creativity to me, right? Creative thinking, right? Creative writing, having ideas about a business or how to build it. That's all creativity. It's
Hmm.
not just about painting a beautiful painting or creating something with your hands. It's like it's the way that you use your brain. That
100%.
to me is what creativity is. And even getting creative in a moment where you're not enjoying what you're doing and finding ways to look at it to actually make it more acceptable. That's
Yeah,
creativity
and that's a
too.
creative process.
Yeah,
Yeah,
creative process. Like how
yeah,
can I, how can I enjoy this? Like what can I do? How can I look at this in a way that it's gonna make this moment a little more pleasant,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, I
That's
think
what
I think it, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, even like the beachcombing, depending on which mindset you could be in, it could be very mundane. Like
Right.
it could be just a walk, right? And part of the reason why I was there was I had a chance of being with my grandkids, that my two youngest ones, and the ocean's still pretty frigid, but they were they had boogie boards, and
Mm,
the waves were pretty good for a pint size person, and just learning the boogie board, like how to catch a wave and body surf down in onto the beach, kind of a thing, eh? And in spite us thinking, oh man, this is really cold water, this is really cool, that never even crossed their minds how
mm,
cold the water was, right? Because they were in that playful, creative mode. It didn't matter what the circumstances were. They were surfing the waves, and I just thought that was, you know, as adults, we have all this layer of thinking that diminishes our experience of what's happening in the moment, regardless of what that is.
well, the layer of thinking, the logical mind, is just using and reusing data, factual data, right?
Mhm.
Recycling it and like combining it in different ways. So it's really like constricted to what it knows, to what it can prove, to what the data is, what the facts are. So it never looks beyond that. It really stops on a surface level of, you know, dimension of reality.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
It doesn't go beyond facts. So it's very limited actually. And
yeah,
that it's actually, really interesting that that's how we live most of our everyday life. Like we've been really trained to live from that level, from that dimension, from that side of our brain, like really use logic to make decisions and create or not create, take action or not take action,
mm,
make a decision about something, make a judgment about something. And it's extremely limiting because it doesn't, yeah, it's not all of who we are.
no, no, and and it's interesting, like I'm sure there's a lot of theories around it. Mostly most theories I find are all based on, well, it's part of our survival.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, the more certain we are about future events, the more we feel that we are prepared for them, and and the more what if things that we brew around, the scenarios, again, it helps us preparing for the future, and yet the future is totally uncertain.
I mean, we think that we're prepared, right? And then so we think that we're prepared, which is a false belief, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going to happen. And then in the background, there's always that anxiety over whether or not that is actually true. So
Mhm.
it's kind of like really working against you no matter what, right? Whereas when you just accept the fact that you can't possibly really control everything that's going to happen, you're just playing with one way of thinking, which is really accepting whatever is going to come your way and accepting that you've done the best that you can,
Yeah.
right? And the rest is just going to unfold. But when we really hold on tight to that, sense of control, false sense of control, and the more like we're also, holding on to, the grip of what if it doesn't actually go that way? So I need to control it more to make sure that it's going to. And it just doesn't really quite work that way, because then when it doesn't go exactly the way we want it, then now we're on the other side of it dealing with disappointment. And we
Dealing with
still have to accept it, right? So you might as well do the acceptance piece without all of this power struggle, to be honest. And just start accepting that you can only do the best that you can, right? With the
Mhm.
knowledge that you have. And it's okay not to have control over every single detail and everything that may or may not happen. There's no way to know if it will.
No, there isn't, and it is interesting. Like you do point to a phenomenon, and I think everybody's experienced this is disappointment. Like and
Right.
and what I'm thinking in my head is like I am disappointed because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to turn out. But what it turned out to is it turned out the way it was supposed to turn out. Like it just,
Right.
you know,
It's kind of like the weather app.
yes.
Not always right. It's just we're just predicting, and oftentimes I always say it's a really good job to have because you can be wrong and still have a job.
I know. It's like, if that was the same criteria for a brain surgeon, um, it's like, thank goodness it isn't, right? But but it is interesting, and and I love weather as a metaphor because for our thinking, because out here we call this the wet coast. Because partly because I live in a rainforest, although you wouldn't think of it nowadays with the weather the way it is. But you wait 15 minutes, and it's changing. It's like, oh, it's raining out right now. Well, wait 15 minutes, it'll change. Instead of, getting, oh shit, it's raining. What am I going to do? I can't do this. I can't do this. Well, wait 15 minutes. Like, and I
Right,
find that interesting when I get caught up in my intellectual side and have those feelings of, oh, this is boring, or this isn't going to work out, or this isn't whatever my ego's coming up with, is to wait 15 minutes, wait a moment, and I 99.9% a new thought comes through, and it's almost this act of letting go of that particular thinking swings that pendulum right into the neutral space, and then there's the opportunity for creativity. That's how I experience it. But like, it's that letting go, and then it's like, oh, okay, I'll accept what you're saying. I'll accept what is, and then now what? And it kind of swings
right.
over into creativity. You find that
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree because
I
you're
want
being,
you to challenge me. No, it's like, just kidding.
you want to be challenged, Rick?
No.
Maybe it's because it's the end of my day and I just don't have it in me. Maybe I was standing around for too long today.
Well, yeah, you talk about altered realities, right? I mean,
Right,
our time difference is almost 12 hours or 10 hours,
10
right?
hours, yeah.
Yeah. And you're 10 hours ahead of me, so you're finishing your day and I'm starting my day, and we were to get together a couple hours earlier. So this is
Right,
pre-planning, and you know and words and communication, are so vital, right?
right.
um
We have
but
to
part
get creative.
but well, you got to get, well, you know what, it's like, okay, so it is, so I'm up. Okay, i could I can make that into something, because
Right,
I think we're always in a creative mode. Like I'm either gonna, it's like Play-Doh. Like everything that we have in front of us is like Play-Doh. Right now it's just a clump of Play-Doh. But
right.
I can turn that into a monster, or I can turn it into a unicorn, if you like unicorns. But it's like, or dragons, right? Like I could turn any of those, like that circumstance of, getting up early, getting prepared for our show, and then discovering, oh, I have 2 hours, right? And it's sort of like, oh, crap, like what am I going to do with 2 hours? Jeez, like I could turn that whole situation into something like that. It's not helpful.
Right.
I know myself enough that that kind of thinking is not helpful. So what can I do? And it's amazing what I've done, including going for a short walk. So and it's perfect because we're expecting 30 plus degrees weather here. So taking a walk at 6 in the morning, it's perfect. It's a
Right.
perfect time, right? So like, yeah, you know what? Maybe the universe is aligning the way it's supposed to.
It always is.
It
It
is.
really is. It always is. We just don't like it. We just don't like what it delivers.
So what stops us from really accepting that? Because if that's truly the answer, like you say, acceptance.
It's a left brain that's got some really big muscles. It just loves to take over, and that's how it feels in control by having its predictions be accurate, right? And the rehearsal, like it analyzes and reanalyzes the data, right?
Mhm.
Because that's all that it has to build the future, to make sense of the present or the past, right? The rehearsing the past. It's all like you're just taking data and you're looking at it and relooking at it and relooking at it, right? So the only way to have feel and control is to have that data to be as accurate as possible.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And when that's not the case, then there's a sense of not having control over things, because if that's the only way you explain reality, then you're not in control, right?
Well,
And it,
go ahead. Go ahead. Keep.
no, and there's a way to reframe those things, right? And really get different perspectives on things. But oftentimes, reframing just from the logical mind only goes so far, because truth be told, we're not just this 3D matter. There's more layers to us. There's more layers to reality. There's more dimensions to us, including our intuition, our creativity. You can't really you just know that it's there, that it exists, right? It's not
Yeah.
it's not tangible sometimes, right? You see the results of it. But I find that oftentimes people even have a hard time understanding or distinguishing what is intuition and what is the voice. What's the difference, right? How do I know it's my intuition?
Right. And I was thinking about that this on my walk actually. My
Right?
walks are very reflective that way. The is how do you discern between you know what's what's ego based or what's creativity based, what's left brain right brain kind of a thing. And the only thing that I can think of that is seems to me a reliable gauge is our feelings.
Right.
What feeling is being presented to me in the moment? Is it a, and this is why I was going with the distinction of between, because I think like one side seems additive, like it seems like I'm building up on, and the other one is like I'm taking away, right? And yeah, there's some sides that are uncertain, lives in uncertainty. Like creativity is all uncertain. We have no idea. I might think what I'll get when I mix yellow and red together, but and it may be the hue that I'm looking for, but it may not. I don't know until I do it.
Right.
But our ego wants
Right.
certainty. It has scarcity. It lives in scarcity. I only have a limited amount of paint to play with. I can't be playing mixing colors trying to get that right hue, because I'm going to run out of paint, because it deals with no abundance. It deals with scarcity. So
Also,
it's
catastrophic thinking.
and there's a feeling to that, right? So there's
Right.
a low mood. I'll just call it low mood thinking and a high mood thinking, and and that tells me where I'm dwelling. Now I've had sort of that high mood creativity. Oh, what a wonderful! I think I'll try doing this, and then the other side comes in, going, "Well, you've tried that before. What makes you think this will work this time?"
Right.
Like, I don't need to pay attention to that because it's distracting me from it, right? So it's knowing what we know, I just find it interesting how we still rely on that very loud voice, and yet it is us, it is our mind. It's not like it's a separate entity dragging you away. It's you.
It's you. It's all of it is you.
It's
Yeah.
all of it's you.
All of it is you. Yeah.
Yeah.
The negative self chatter, the intuition, the logical mind, it's all you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's important to keep it all into account, right? Because there's also a really great function to the logical mind.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't be very much done without it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, like you drive, our speech, all those things are, that we sort of take for granted, comes from that intellectual side. It doesn't come from the creativity side. It comes from the intellectual
Right.
side. Yeah, it relies on the good things, the memory things, and yes, it's there to keep us safe, but it can't tell reality from, you know.
It's a, yeah.
So it is interesting, and and even though I've been in this kind of atmosphere for a long, long time, it's just so interesting how I can get hypnotized by that voice and think it's real. Like,
Yeah.
especially the ones that have that real stickiness, like Velcro to them, like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. Those are huge. Those are big ones. And they just seem
It's
to,
a very familiar one. It's a
yeah.
very familiar one, right? And so when it speaks and when it has ammunition,
Hmm.
it feels really true. It feels really, really true in that moment. And I think it's important to let it feel that way in the moment with the understanding there's just a moment. In this moment, this feels really true, and feel that feeling. Then, after you felt it within your body, just move into reframing it. Because without that, when we skip that piece of feeling it and acknowledging it and seeing it, we're just bypassing. It
Yes.
just stays there, right?
Yeah.
So there are moments where it feels really real. Where we get lost is in the guilt and the frustration and the anger and the resistance of it, the bypassing of it.
Hmm.
It's just a feeling in the moment, right? And there's a reason why it feels so true. It's very familiar. A lifetime of rehearsing that, it's gonna sound familiar when you hear it. And you're
Absolutely.
gonna want to believe it, right?
And there's I don't know if you ever come across this YouTube video, but it's got Tom Hanks and I think Robert De Niro's in there, and there's a few of them all sitting around this round table. And one of the Tom Hanks is talking about one of the biggest lessons that he's learned, um, growing up, for lack of a better word, becoming an adult, or getting older, um, is the phrase "this too shall pass."
Right, right,
And this is something, from my own personal nature. There's a lot of things that are circumstances that are going on in my personal life, and was having a conversation with the family about it, and that popped up. It's like, this shall to pass. Like, like, we will get over this. Like when we reflect back at all the other times that we thought that, oh my God, could it ever get any worse?
it did pass eventually. It did pass.
Well, yes, yeah. And I think that's part of that piece of letting go and accepting,
Right,
and allowing the emotion and allowing the feeling of the moment to to be there.
right, right.
you know
Yeah. And and I think yes, and then that's how you just accept. right? That process of acceptance that we're talking about, that the sooner you get on that, and the faster you get into the flow of life, right? And, going back to creativity, on the opposite side, when you do something creative, on the other hand, it really is easy to get into the flow of life. I find that creative work, creating anything, just really does quite the opposite, right? You lose sense of time, you stop tracking time, and you just really get into the thinking that is creating in that moment. And so it's a much gentler energy to sit in. It's a lot more fluid and in the flow and intuitive.
Very much.
Yeah. So they're very different energies. One is more controlled and one is more like fluid.
Yeah. And I find most, especially when you're struggling with what is perceived to be a big problem.
Right. I love that you said that. I was just thinking that.
Yeah. It's like, I've got to figure this out. I've got to, and what we're going through now is sort of like, well, what can we do? What are some of the answers that we need to be looking for, right? And we're trying to figure it out. And like you were saying earlier, we're relying on intellect. Well, it's very limited. Like, we only know what we know. So the best that we can come up with is stuff that we've already tried. And so what we need to do, like Einstein says, the thinking that got us into this situation can't be the same thinking. And that's what he's pointing to. He says we have to let go of the intellect. We have to let go of what we know and just allow something new, fresh and new. Not to go look for it, but just to allow it to come in. And a lot of times it's doing different things. Like, sometimes we find it in the mundane.
Most times, problem solving is a creative process. Like, effective problem solving is something that comes from a creative point of view. Because oftentimes the problem is there because we don't see a solution to it, because we only see things this way or this way. And when we are up against putting those two things together, we don't see a way out.
No.
The way out is to think creatively. The way out is to think outside the box. The way out is to go beyond the boundaries of what we think is absolutely true and the only solution or way to look at something.
Yeah.
So it's really, problem solving oftentimes comes from our creative side, but we give our logical brain the credit.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like, how smart am I? That's, there's the
I
ego.
solved it.
I solved it. See how smart I am? See how creative I am? Yeah, that's funny.
And I would also say, when you can't solve a problem, I find that sitting there and trying to solve it is not how you solve it. Oftentimes it is when you shift into the creative side and you feed that and you do something completely different and fun, and you shift where your mind has the grip. The idea just comes.
I know.
Without really intentionally sitting there trying to solve it.
Yeah.
By truly letting go.
Yeah.
And being in a creative space, being in the flow, being in that fluid energy.
And I know this is very hard. And this is something that we were discussing in a group yesterday, because it sounds so counterintuitive. Because it almost sounds like you want me to let go of a problem I think is so darn important, right? It's almost like I'm saying the problem's not important anymore, but yet it is important. It's important enough for you to let go of it, to come up with a better solution, to come up with different ideas. And it was amazing, even after a moment of letting go of this very intense, real looking problem, fresh thinking was coming through, and it's funny, like, and then we forget about it. We get wrapped up in the problem again, and we're trying to figure it out, and then we go, oh, wait a minute, oh, that's not the way to do it.
A lifetime of being wired that way, right?
I know.
That path is very, very carved. And while we may have another path that's carved, when we like even like just begin to take the other path, it just goes right in, you
Yeah.
know. So it's very familiar, it's very well carved, and it takes time to just carve the other path really, really well so that, you know, it becomes a choice versus an you know, an automated direction you're taking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I use feelings as that gauge of really, you know, it's after the fact. Yes, I always get wrapped up in it, but then there's that moment of clarity where I go, oh, okay, yeah, this isn't working. This isn't working. You know, it's what can I do differently? Well, maybe distract myself, go for a walk, do something different, talk about something different. Um, Enough to let go of, like, step away from the problem. Like, you know, that was another thing. Um, you know, I started, like, when you're up against, it's like putting a sheet of paper right up against your eyeballs.
Right.
You can't see anything around it. You can't see any other solution to it other than what's in front of you. But when you step back, even if you took a step back, which to me is taking a pause moment, like just let go of your thinking for a second, you start to see, oh, there's boundaries to this. There's limits to this, and there's a whole bunch of other things around it. And the further you step yourself away, the problem, which looked really, really big, now is in more perspective.
Right, because now you've gotten rid of all the things that amplify the problem, right? Your
Yeah,
the meaning making, the emotions, the rehearsal. You've stepped away from it enough to where you just see the problem,
yeah, yeah,
right? You just see what is.
yeah,
Whereas often what makes problems challenging is how we decorate it, right? How we build it up with our, you know, meaning making machine and the
yeah,
emotions and attaching, you know, like a similar past event to it, and so it triggers us, right? We really build things up, and from that space you can only see things from that perspective. When you're this close to a TV screen, all you see is that, what
yeah,
you're staring at, right? But the moment that you step back, now you see the full picture. You
yeah,
see the whole movie. You see what's happening in the movie,
yeah,
right? But
yeah,
we're oftentimes just like this, you know, we're like, we don't see anything else.
yeah,
Like our entire eyesight is covered by this specific view that we have in that moment.
yeah. And the solutions that it's coming up with is very, very limited.
Very
Very
limited.
limited.
Very limited.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Interesting stuff. Like, man, oh man, if there's, I know so many mystics and other teachers that, you know, talk about, like, if there's one thing that we could just tell people or get people to think about or just reflect on, is this piece of discernment between your intellectual thinking, you know, and your creative thinking. Like, you know, like when you get wrapped up in your thinking, um I don't know, it may feel good in the moment, but I've never had any real solutions going forward.
But the thinking is driving your decisions instead of you driving your own decisions.
Well, and the feelings too. There's
The
another
feeling.
interesting part, right? Because I'm having a shitty feeling right now over this thinking. There's things that, okay, now I need to get rid of this. How can I get rid of this feeling?
Right.
And then again, because it's such a narrow focus, we point towards outside things. And we're saying, well, if that's different, or if I take this or this, I'll feel better. And that's not necessarily the truth either. So
Almost never is.
no, 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 no. How do we get this message? It's like the age-old problem, hey?
I mean, I would just say, you know, like one way to really go through all of it with the most amount of flow is to just really give yourself some, you know, some creative breaks,
Yes.
you know. just give your mind some breaks through, like you said, you went on a walk, and then the reason why you're able to actually connect with fresh and new ideas is because you're slowing down the logical brain, like through presence and connection with nature and connection with our intuition and our thoughts and really seeing our own selves, we're able to come up with sometimes revolutionary ideas, right? They don't really come, fresh ideas. They don't come from like obsessing over something.
No.
Know,
Yeah.
from a logical standpoint, they come in the moment that you just like go and relax and like tap into all that you are. And we are creative beings. We are intuitive beings, and that part of us really needs to have an opportunity to come to the surface, to show up, to be, so that we can tap into our full potential.
Yeah, and it's within everybody. That's the other thing. Like, 300 years ago, the other side was more valued. The creativity side was more valued.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, by whatever
right. I mean, they're both valid and they're both useful and they're both important. It's just it's in the balance of the two.
It's in the balance. That's a good point.
Yeah. We find a place of harmony.
Yeah. And so far, right now, we are too one-sided, and we need to recognize
very
that.
much. And it's not just the way we operate as individuals. It's also the conditioning from society and how much weight it puts on all things logical brain. Like the values and the things that we celebrate. Even I think about my kids' curriculum in school. They have 1 hour of music, 1 hour of art, and like 6 hours of math and 10 hours of it. Like it's just not valued. We're just conditioned to really not see those things as valuable.
No.
And they are crucial in creating balance and harmony within us as human beings.
Everything that's in front of us, including our computers, our screens, everything came from a creative side.
Exactly.
Right? Think about that for a second, right?
Even this podcast came from a creative idea.
Absolutely. And it was very spontaneous, and we
spontaneous.
And we didn't allow the intellect to overthink. How are we going to do this? Will we have time? All the different things that the intellect likes to bring forward to us, right? And then we talk ourselves out of it. No, we just went, you know what? We'll start next week, okay? Okay. and 2 years later.
How about we start today? We start now,
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I know I don't have a problem with that, and I know I am going to try and get creative so that the next episode we film, broadcast, I'm going to have something a little more creative than this behind me. Because it's driving me a little bit crazy that there's this white.
Well, it's a blank canvas, right? And it's sort of like, I get it. I look at something blank and I'm going, what can I add to that?
Visually, I need a little more.
Yeah. No. Anyways, wonderful conversation with you today.
Absolutely.
No, it's both of our favorite subjects is creativity,
Right. We're both very creative people.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes that gets me into trouble when I'm overusing my creativity. If there's such a thing.
Because the opposite is true too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I find it that, when that's lacking, that creativity is lacking in my life, it's just, I feel dry and drained and just,
You're out of balance.
Out of balance.
Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. So let's get back into balance. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. I'm going to get creative and get put some nice things on myself because I have to go to a social event after
Nice.
this. And that's another way to get creative, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
wear
Yeah,
and how you show up.
and put those feelings on, right? Yeah, no, it's
And
really.
I'm gonna put it in the universe that something will appear behind me for the next episode.
I can't wait. I can't wait. So yeah, so if you got value from our show, please share us.
Share the episode, help us amplify our impact,
Yeah,
subscribe, follow, and listen to the podcast when it comes out. If that's the best way for you to keep up
yeah,
with all of this, you can listen to it on your own time.
yeah, and support us. Your way of supporting is by liking and sharing, but even comments.
Right.
Love
Let us
love to
know.
hear how you think about this subject, what you do to get out of a busy mind, little things like that.
How
Always
do you
help.
get creative? How do you
How do
get creative?
you, exactly. Yeah.
Share your creativity with us.
Yeah. All righty.
Hi, my friend. Until next time, it's good
Yes.
to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.